Belief can make you powerful. Why, with enough belief, you can even cheat death itself. Now that is a beautiful and positively silly thought.
Bendy and the Ink Machine has come to a close. Well, a repeating close, but a close nonetheless. But like I said in my last video, the ending we are given leaves us entirely empty. We want answers, but we don't have them. At first, we're confused as to what we just experienced. But unless you truly take a deep dive into the game, you'll end up empty-handed. Now, the biggest issue with deciphering the ending of the game is that we technically have two stories being told. We have the repeating cycle of a story that takes place within the studio, the inner story, and we have the outer story. Now, the inner story is obviously one of a nightmare, one in which Henry can't escape, and the only thing he can do to both remember and keep his sanity is to write on the walls. How you perceive this part of the story completely sets the tone for the story outside of the studio. If you're someone who argues that this is a story about Joey's life regrets, a boss whose dream overtook him and made him arrive at the end of his life feeling empty, then the inner story needs to match that, because if there's an outlier, it can break the theory. The same thing goes if you believe the ending of Bendy to be one in which we're experiencing the cycle of a film or cartoon over and over again. The ending repeats and the game starts over again just like a cartoon or show would. But again, unless the intentions of the characters outside the realm of the cartoon match up with the intentions within, there's a hole in the theory. And even today, what I say in this video could very well be in that same category. But let's take a step back. Regardless of how you perceive the inner story, the one within the studio, some things are clear no matter what. People are suffering. People are trapped. And regardless of what you do, the nightmare never ends. You end the game, add another tally mark to the wall, and proceed forward once again. Now, if this was solely about Joey candidly sharing with you what he's been up to in the past 30 years, then there's no reason for the nightmare to persist. Once he's done with his story, it should be over. Furthermore, once we arrive at the end, the day we start the journey over again shouldn't be changing. If what we're experiencing is a repeating cycle, it should repeat exactly so. The dates shouldn't skip around randomly in the month of August. My fellow Minus World peer Tetrabit Gaming recently did a dive into the code of the game, and saw that the date is always random. Now, we've definitely noticed this in playthroughs ourselves, and obviously watching our favorite Let's Players do the same. However, knowing the calendar is a random date between the 1st and the 30th is really bizarre. That means when this time loop finishes, it spits us out at a different time, yet the same event occurs. What's further confusing is that the 31st can never be reached, or at least currently it seems that way. However, it's circled on the calendar. What's so important about that day? Is it the day we need to break the loop? But what's even more interesting is that Joey Drew's bankruptcy hearing is also taking place in August. Unfortunately, we can't tell whether it's the same year, but if it is the same year, the fact that it's happening is essentially a death sentence to Joey's dream. We can see that the power bill was way overdue back in June too. The fact that these are pinned to the board makes them seem relevant to now instead of the past. While some things like the sketch and the tickets of Bendyland are obviously from the past, it wouldn't make sense to keep bills there because the importance of seeing a bill or statement is so that you don't forget about it. If the bankruptcy process already took place, wouldn't he take these down? And it makes you wonder, is the 31st the day that everything comes to a close? But I think this is a part that lots of people overlook, because these two documents do not go together at all. Lots of people look at the bill on the board and assume it's one of the pieces that led to the bankruptcy incident. However, these are addressed to two different receivers. Joey Drew Studios and Joey Drew are not the same entity. The bankruptcy form is strictly for the business. And the astronomical electricity bill, I mean, good grief, $3,000? That bill is for Joey's home where we're standing. We know this because it's a bill for residential electricity. Residential and commercial electricity plans are entirely different. That means that something is being used within Joey's home to draw absurd amounts of power. Something that doesn't rightfully belong there. And that's the Ink Machine.
The truth is, you were always so good at pushing, old friend. Pushing me to do the right thing. You should have pushed a little harder.
I don't think Joey Drew was entirely being candid with us. It's true that people can change. in that people can reflect on their past and regret their choices. But just as often, people don't change. They get stuck in their ways, and they're stubborn to the end. Joey's story that he tells a young girl at the end of the game can be separate from the story of the repeating nightmare taking place just behind his walls. We know that Joey stole the ink machine once the studio closed by Allison Connor's letter. She refers to it as your old studio, meaning they're aware the studio closed. And rewinding a bit, a business closing and a business filing for bankruptcy are also two different things. The studio itself could have closed prior to the bankruptcy filing. So what purpose would Joey Drew have with bringing this mysterious ink machine into his home? And the only logical explanation, given what the ink machine does, is to bring his new creations to life, to bring his world to life. And that's why he wrote to everyone. He didn't write to people to just say hello. He reconnected with people to draw them into his trap, to rekindle the relationship so that maybe next time they were in town, he would trap them in his ink world. Now, we're not entirely sure if this process kills them or if it just clones them, but the concept is very similar to an episode of Black Mirror called USS Callister. In this episode, a lead developer of an MMORPG creates a build of his game in which he copies his coworkers from their DNA to create sentient digital versions of themselves in the game. They are at his mercy and cannot escape the ship, where they, day in and day out, navigate through repeating plot lines and scenarios for all of eternity. It's a super crazy episode, but that same concept makes tons of sense for Bendy. We can even see messages within the game that support this. We're all his playthings. That statement alone is super weird, because Henry has to be aware of the greater situation, rather than just the one that involves the ink demon in order to write that message. At that point in his quest, he really doesn't have an understanding of things yet. We haven't spoken with the demonic Alice Angel yet, and there's still so much to be discovered. But beyond that, we know the last thing Henry saw was some of the artwork in Joey's house, because when we encounter that artwork in the studio, he says it reminds him of home. Not his actual home, but the last area he was in within the real world before he was trapped within this inky dungeon. It makes me wonder about those 6 items we collected too. Remember how Joey requested that each employee donate something from their workstation? To appease the gods, he said. But what if those items are what ultimately led these people to being trapped? What if Joey needed something from each person in order to clone them in the ink world? Once in the ink world, they would have to conform to the reality he created, the nightmare he manifested. We know some weird things happen in the old studio too, based off the files that can be found in the game. One in particular is a note from Sammy Lawrence. Now it's important to note that these textures are with the real world house textures, meaning these were written outside of the ink world. Yet, Sammy still mentions that the cutouts are multiplying in the studio. Obviously, this occurs in Chapter 2 and is a bit creepy. It's possible someone is just setting them up, but we can't rule out the weirdness of what happens within the game. All in all, in true Joey Drew fashion, even within his devilish world, his plotline still has everyone else doing all the work. Only Henry can stop what he created, and Joey Drew is the jolly voice that everyone hears along the way, despite the grievances of his employees. If he's truly stuck in his ways, then his life regrets are merely that everyone else abandoned his dream. They gave up on his passion, and despite Joey realizing his empire is failing, I think he grew jealous of their life paths. Henry was always good at pushing Joey to do the right thing as his business partner, but he should have pushed a little harder, because if Joey can't be happy, no one can. Joey did what he does best: stealing. Stealing the credit of those around him, and stealing them from the lives they built, out of revenge for them moving on when he couldn't. The result? A never-ending cycle of anguish. Within an inky world they cannot escape. Even death wasn't enough to escape for some of them. Beyond that, in Joey's house we can find a recent newspaper at the top of the stack that reads, "Local artist pushed himself too hard. Found dead at desk." Is this just a humorous commentary on the work ethic of artists? Or did Henry or some other character die recently? It makes you wonder. But that's just my devil's advocate interpretation. In Bendy and the Ink Machine, everything was always not as it seemed. I feel like Joey being regretful is too simple of a plotline for the story that was built up. I think the ending of this game is designed so that there's multiple scenarios that can be argued in the end. But then again, I could be completely wrong. That's what's fun about theories after all. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And with that, thanks for tuning in to this alternative outlook. Although I found Bendy's ending odd at first, I'm actually really content with how they wrapped it up. Its mystery will continue to live on. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers.